In the nascent dawn of the 20th century, as the year 1900 unfurled its promise, a singular figure articulated a vision so profound, so utterly ahead of its time, that it bordered on the realm of prophecy. This individual posited that, in a future yet to fully materialize, any person, whether traversing the vast oceans or firmly rooted on terra firma, would possess the remarkable capability to receive news emanating from any corner of the globe. Moreover, they would be able to intercept messages specifically and exclusively intended for them, all through the use of a remarkably simple apparatus, an unassuming device that could effortlessly nestle within the confines of a pocket. This incredible prediction, uttered when the world was still grappling with the rudimentary mechanics of the telegraph and the very first cumbersome iterations of the telephone, was, in essence, a vivid foretelling of the ubiquitous cellular phone that defines our modern existence. It is paramount to grasp the temporal context of this pronouncement. At that historical juncture, the telephone, a marvel in its own right, was merely an infant technology, a fledgling concept with limited reach and even more limited practical application. The notion of remote transmission signals, the very bedrock of wireless communication, was then just a whispered theory, a faint glimmer on the distant horizon of scientific inquiry. Yet, amidst this landscape of nascent innovation, this extraordinary individual, Nikola Tesla, stood as an inventor of unparalleled foresight, a true genius whose intellect soared far beyond the conventional boundaries of his era. He was a man endowed with a superior mind, undeniably one of humanity's most brilliant intellects, whose life, however, would unfold into a narrative of both breathtaking triumph and profound, often tragic, complexity. The extraordinary narrative of Nikola Tesla commences in the year 1856, within the tranquil, almost pastoral confines of Smiljan, a small village nestled in what was then part of the Austrian Empire, a region we now recognize as Croatia. It was in the modest parsonage, the home of the local Orthodox priest Milutin Tesla, that his wife, Juka Mandic, brought forth a child into the world. This infant, destined to bear the name Nikola Tesla, was, from his earliest days, not particularly robust or blessed with vigorous health. His physical constitution was delicate, rendering him susceptible to the myriad maladies that circulated in that era. His father, a man of profound faith and scholarly inclination, harbored a fervent desire for young Nikola to follow in his footsteps, to embrace the solemn path of the Orthodox Church, a vocation where, unlike some other Christian denominations, marriage was permitted. His mother, a woman of immense practical wisdom and deep affection, yearned for her son to be more physically resilient, to experience the joys of health, and, in due course, to introduce a robust and beautiful bride into their home, one who would contribute to the daily rhythms of household life. However, the young Nikola found himself disinclined towards either of these parental aspirations. He was not drawn to the rigid structures of the church, nor did the conventional domestic expectations of the time capture his imagination. Instead, his spirit was characterized by a profound dreaminess, an introspective nature that often bordered on the ethereal, coupled with a persistent and debilitating sickliness. It seemed as though every passing ailment, every whisper of disease, would readily cling to his frail form. Yet, remarkably, amidst this physical fragility, he displayed an astonishing aptitude for learning, excelling academically to the profound astonishment and quiet pride of both his parents. This was an epoch when formal education was a rare privilege, and the prospects for an individual to pursue extensive studies were severely constrained. Despite these limitations, this particular child exhibited an extraordinary intellectual prowess, a natural brilliance that set him apart. His mother, Juka, possessed an intuitive understanding of this brilliance, for she recognized a kindred spirit in her son. Though she herself had never attended formal schools, remaining illiterate, unable to either read or write, her mind was a treasure trove of knowledge. She could recite entire biblical passages, vast and intricate narratives from memory, having absorbed them through attentive listening. Beyond this astonishing mnemonic ability, Juka was, in every practical sense, a true engineer. Her ingenuity knew no bounds as she constantly devised and improved various contrivances to lighten the burdens of household chores. She famously enhanced the primitive laundry apparatus of the time, refining the devices used for washing and drying clothes, effectively inventing improvements that made them more efficient. Driven by a distaste for the tedious manual labor of whisking egg yolks and whites with a simple rod, she conceived and constructed her own mechanical egg beater, a testament to her inventive spirit. It was this remarkable woman, with her boundless curiosity and practical genius, who ignited and nurtured the burgeoning scientific curiosity within young Nikola, laying the foundational sparks for the incredible journey that lay ahead. Yet, despite the nascent spark of genius, Nikola's perpetually precarious health cast a long shadow over his early years. His frail constitution proved to be a constant impediment. At the tender age of 15, a truly harrowing ordeal befell him. He contracted cholera, a devastating disease that swept through populations with merciless efficiency. The young Nikola teetered precariously on the brink of death, his life hanging by a thread. His father, who had persistently urged him to abandon his academic pursuits in favor of a spiritual path, witnessed his son's dire condition and, in a moment of profound desperation and paternal love, made a solemn vow. He promised Nikola that if he were to miraculously survive this terrible affliction and fully recover, he would be permitted, indeed encouraged, to attend university, a dream that had seemed increasingly distant. Against all odds, Nikola rallied. He not only survived the deadly grip of cholera, but also made a full recovery, aided, it is said, by the imaginative and escapist worlds he found within the pages of Mark Twain's literary works, which provided a much-needed mental respite during his convalescence. Once fully recuperated, Tesla embarked upon an astonishing academic odyssey. He enrolled in university, initially pursuing mechanical engineering, a field that offered practical applications for his inventive mind. Subsequently, his boundless curiosity led him to delve into the intricate laws of physics, and then to yet another discipline of engineering, demonstrating an insatiable appetite for knowledge across diverse scientific and technical domains. He was a man of truly astounding intellectual capacity, a fact dramatically underscored by an incident at the Graz Polytechnic Institute, where he narrowly avoided expulsion. The professor, presiding over one of the most notoriously complex examinations, became convinced that Tesla had cheated. While his peers toiled for hours, their brows furrowed in concentration, meticulously filling pages with calculations, Tesla had completed the entire examination in mere moments. He had performed no visible operations in his notebook. Instead, he simply glanced at each question, then, with an almost preternatural calm, looked upwards and wrote down the final answer. Naturally, he omitted all the intermediate steps, the intricate calculations that would typically fill pages. When the bewildered and increasingly suspicious instructor approached him, accusing him of deceit, stating that such results were impossible without detailed computations, Tesla's response was characteristically direct and utterly self-assured. "But of course, I have done the calculations. They are all right up here," he declared, tapping his temple. The professor, incensed by what he perceived as audacious insolence, immediately presented Tesla with another formidable problem. Nikola, undeterred, repeated his extraordinary feat. He paused for a few seconds, his mind clearly working at an incredible speed, then effortlessly provided the correct solution, sketching it out on a piece of paper. The professor, now even more infuriated and utterly perplexed, posed yet another complex challenge, likely involving advanced mathematics that were cutting-edge for the era. And with the same singular ease and almost joyful confidence, Tesla once again delivered the correct answer. As this astonishing display unfolded, the other students in the class, having long since submitted their own labored exams, had departed. Yet the initial instructor remained so utterly intrigued and bewildered that several other professors had been summoned, witnessing the spectacle themselves and posing their own intricate problems. and each time, without undue fanfare or visible effort, this extraordinary young man provided the solutions, consistently achieving the highest marks. From a very young age, Tesla possessed an unparalleled ability to memorize. Have you ever heard of photographic memory? Nikola Tesla was, in essence, a living embodiment of this rare gift. He was capable of reading an entire book and absorbing its contents, committing it to memory with astonishing ease. Retention was never a challenge for him. His mind was a vast, perfectly indexed library of information. Upon the completion of his formal studies, a period that saw him simultaneously pursuing further knowledge and engaging in practical work, Tesla embarked on a journey that would ultimately lead him to the shores of America. His initial professional steps took him to Vienna, where he immersed himself in the burgeoning field of telephony, contributing his intellect to an emerging communications enterprise. From Vienna, his path led him to France, where he found employment with a company that, significantly, operated under the vast umbrella of Thomas Alva Edison's empire. It was in the pivotal year of 1884, a year marked by the grand transatlantic voyage of the disassembled Statue of Liberty, that Nikola Tesla, in a parallel yet equally significant crossing, made his own journey across the Atlantic. Upon his arrival in the United States, Tesla, with characteristic determination, sought out the offices of Thomas Alva Edison. He presented himself with a letter of introduction, penned by the director of Edison's company in France, a testament to his burgeoning reputation. The letter, now legendary, read with prescient insight, "My dear Mr. Edison, I know two great men, and you are one of them. The other is this young man." Such an endorsement from a trusted colleague naturally secured Tesla a position within Edison's formidable organization. From that moment, an intense, if ultimately volatile, collaboration began between Nikola Tesla and Thomas Alva Edison, the celebrated Wizard of Menlo Park, an inventor, engineer, and shrewd entrepreneur whose name was synonymous with innovation. This professional alliance, however, was destined to fracture. A fundamental schism emerged between the two titans of electricity. Thomas Alva Edison remained an unwavering advocate for direct current, or DC, a technology that, though foundational, would later be definitively proven to be inherently inefficient for long-distance power transmission. In stark contrast, Nikola Tesla had already made profound forays into the revolutionary realm of alternating current, or AC, a system he recognized held far greater potential. He had not merely theorized, he had discovered the principles of rotating magnetic fields, a cornerstone of AC technology. Through his relentless experimentation and profound insights, he had devised groundbreaking improvements for electric generators, for motors, for an array of electrical equipment, for the very infrastructure of wiring and distribution, and even for the design of electric lamps, effectively reimagining and enhancing virtually every aspect of Edison's existing electrical paradigm. Of course, Edison, a seasoned veteran of the industrial landscape, was no naive observer. He was a shrewd old wolf of the sea, well versed in the cutthroat realities of business and innovation. The inherent tension between their differing philosophies and competing technologies inexorably escalated. While initially, Edison had been something of a hero to the young Nikola Tesla, a beacon of inventive prowess, their paths diverged dramatically and irrevocably. The ultimate consequence of this bitter war of the currents was that Nikola Tesla found himself cast out, utterly penniless, adrift on the unforgiving streets of New York. Despite having made monumental strides and contributing significantly to Edison's operations, his genius left him without a cent. He was reduced to the physically demanding and profoundly unsuited labor of digging ditches. Yes, literally excavating trenches in the unforgiving urban landscape with nothing more than a pickaxe and a shovel. This period of manual labor, however, proved to be excruciatingly problematic for Tesla, for a confluence of deeply personal reasons. Firstly, his inherent physical fragility, a characteristic that had marked him since childhood, meant he was simply not a man of robust strength. The arduous, repetitive nature of digging trenches was antithetical to his delicate constitution. Secondly, and perhaps even more significantly, Tesla was profoundly afflicted by a series of severe obsessive-compulsive disorders, or OCD. This made him an incredibly difficult individual to interact with on a conventional social level. He was the type of person who would steadfastly refuse a handshake, recoiling from physical contact. He was capable of abruptly walking away from a conversation, leaving an interlocutor mid-sentence if his attention waned or if the topic failed to immediately captivate him. His interest in any subject was fleeting if it did not seize his imagination within the initial seconds. If it failed to spark that instantaneous intellectual fire, it simply held no further appeal for him. Consequently, that year spent laboring in the streets, performing menial tasks utterly beneath his extraordinary intellectual capabilities, was nothing short of a tremendous ordeal, a period of profound personal suffering for a man of his unique mental architecture. Yet fate, or perhaps sheer serendipity, intervened. His foreman, a man who, despite his humble position, possessed an innate curiosity and keen observational skills, eventually engaged Tesla in conversation. As they spoke, the foreman was increasingly astounded by the breadth and depth of Tesla's knowledge, realizing he was conversing with someone far beyond the ordinary laborer. Intrigued, almost bewildered, he posed the question, "What are you, exactly? An engineer in this field, and that, and physics, and all these other things. What are you doing here? Scraping ditches?" This pivotal encounter led to a connection with another individual, and then another, a chain of fortuitous introductions that ultimately culminated in Tesla's ability to secure the necessary backing and resources to establish his very own laboratory, a sanctuary where his unparalleled genius could finally unfurl its wings. While the intricate and circuitous path to its realization would be far too extensive to fully detail here, Tesla ultimately succeeded in acquiring and establishing his own dedicated laboratory, a true sanctuary for his boundless imagination and relentless drive. Within these hallowed walls, he began to tirelessly work on his myriad projects, a true testament to his multifaceted genius. Tesla's work habits were legendary and bordered on the superhuman. He possessed an astonishing capacity for abstract thought, allowing him to immerse himself so deeply in his work that he could labor for an astounding 84 continuous hours. His pauses were not dictated by the gnawing weariness of exhaustion or the insistent pull of sleep, but rather by the moment of completion. Once a task or an inventive problem had been fully resolved, only then would he retire to his room to rest. This single-minded dedication extended to his personal life. He deliberately chose to forego the traditional comforts and responsibilities of a permanent home, preferring instead the transient, unencumbered existence of hotel living. A hotel room for Tesla was not merely a place of rest, but a strategic choice that liberated him from the mundane obligations of home ownership, allowing him to channel every waking moment, every ounce of his prodigious energy into the singular pursuit that defined his very being: invention. It is crucial to clarify a common misconception. Nikola Tesla was not, in the conventional sense, a scientist. Many mistakenly label him as such. Rather, he was a genius, a visionary, a creator more than an academic. His modus operandi deviated sharply from the established scientific norms of his time. He did not submit lengthy documents for peer review, nor did he engage in meticulously documented incremental research in the manner of his contemporaries. The pursuit of theses or doctorates held little appeal for him. Instead, Tesla built, he created, he brought things into tangible existence. While others might lay the theoretical groundwork, conducting extensive preliminary investigations and formulating abstract principles, Tesla would absorb this knowledge, internalize it, and then, with an almost magical dexterity, transform these theoretical possibilities into practical, working realities. This was the essence of his unparalleled success. the genius who could bridge the chasm between a distant abstract concept, a theoretical blueprint conceived by others, and an operable, functional invention. Naturally, this unconventional approach, this disregard for academic protocol, earned him not only a lack of respect but also a distinct absence of affection from the established scientific community. Tesla was subjected to considerable criticism, often harshly so because his groundbreaking inventions, though rooted in various scientific postulates, were not subjected to the rigorous, formalized review processes demanded by the academic institutions. Moreover, he harbored little reverence for the grand, established scientific luminaries of his era. Indeed, on more than one occasion, he openly criticized Albert Einstein himself, offering what many considered to be barbaric opinions regarding the theory of relativity and other prevailing scientific paradigms. He boldly asserted that many of the fundamental tenets proposed by these celebrated geniuses were, in fact, flawed or outright incorrect. Yet, the undeniable, irrefutable truth remained. His inventions worked. This was the most compelling and, indeed, the most interesting aspect of the entire phenomenon. The sheer, undeniable genius residing within that complex, often enigmatic man. The sheer breadth and quantity of Tesla's inventions are staggering, and often, their true origin is fraught with historical dispute. It is understandable that many, particularly those well-versed in the history of science and invention, might initially believe certain attributions to be firmly established. However, a deeper examination reveals a compelling, often overlooked truth. Take, for instance, the monumental discovery of X-rays. The widely accepted narrative credits Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen with their discovery in 1895, with Marie Curie subsequently playing a significant role in their application. Yet, a crucial detail is often omitted. While Röntgen indeed conceived of the specific medical applications of X-rays, Nikola Tesla was already actively working in his laboratory on a related problem as early as 1901. A full 4 years before Röntgen's definitive work and 8 years before the Nobel Prize. Tesla's focus was on the perplexing phenomenon of photographic plates decomposing when exposed to certain energies. His subsequent investigations led him to develop what he termed shadow graphs, or sombra grafias, which were in essence the foundational principles of X-rays. He certainly patented aspects of this groundbreaking work, and while Conrad Röntgen later expanded upon and popularized the medical applications, the original inventive spark, the core concept, originated with Tesla. The story of the radio presents an even more pronounced example of disputed attribution. For decades, Guglielmo Marconi has been widely celebrated as the inventor of radio. Yet, historical records and judicial rulings tell a different story. Tesla, it can be argued, was the first to conceptualize and demonstrate the principles of wireless transmission. Indeed, many years later, in a landmark decision in 1943, the United States Supreme Court recognized that the fundamental principles Marconi utilized to create his radio apparatus infringed upon at least 7 of Nikola Tesla Arc's pre-existing patents. This ruling effectively acknowledged that Marconi had, to a significant extent, built upon Tesla's foundational inventions to bring radio into commercial reality. And this pattern of foundational invention, often followed by later reattribution, extends across a lengthy list of his creations. Consider the humble spark plug for automobiles. The very concept, particularly the spark plugs as we know them, were a Tesla invention. His rotary motors, while not the first electric motors, fundamentally transformed industrial dynamics by introducing unprecedented levels of efficiency and reliability. These were not merely incremental improvements. They were revolutionary designs that made electric power practical and widespread. Then there is the remarkable innovation of wireless remote control. Yes, the wireless remote control, a device so ubiquitous today, was pioneered by Tesla. He conceived of and demonstrated systems that could be directed from a distance, utilizing a small apparatus capable of altering specific frequencies, intensities, and electromagnetic signals to induce an object to change position or activate its motors. A famous demonstration involved a remote-controlled boat navigating a small pond in New York, a truly historic first. While contemporaries might have dismissed this as an impractical novelty, its implications for future technologies were immense. Many of his other contributions were far from impractical. His instrumental role in aiding George Westinghouse to establish the monumental hydroelectric power plant at Niagara Falls stands as a towering testament to his genius. It was his AC apparatus, his very own inventions, that harnessed the immense power of the falls and distributed it across vast distances, lighting up cities and powering industries. From there, the list continues: neon lights, sophisticated electric water pump systems, and even the fundamental concept of the electric car itself, hence the modern company bearing his name. But his prolific inventiveness did not cease there. During his most productive period, Tesla amassed an astonishing portfolio of approximately 700 patents. Some of these might appear innocuous, perhaps even absurd in retrospect, while others were monumental in scope, yet many were truly astounding in their foresight and impact. His revolutionary idea of alternating current, meticulously developed and championed with Westinghouse, forms the bedrock of the electrical grid we rely upon every single day. The electrical outlet in your home, the plug, the wall socket, whatever you choose to call it, is, in its essence, a direct descendant of Nikola Tesla's genius. When you turn the ignition of your automobile, the very action that brings the vehicle to life is powered by principles and devices that can be traced back to his innovations. It is highly probable that at least half of the components within a modern car owe their existence to one of Tesla's many inventions. This was a man who spent his days in a tireless pursuit of invention. The cellular or mobile phone, as it is also known, fundamentally relies on principles pioneered by Tesla. The sophisticated systems of communication through signals were the very essence of his early life's work. Throughout his varied career, Tesla experienced periods of generous patronage, celebrated successes, and, inevitably, profound failures. Yet, if one were to quantify his accuracy, his batting average in the realm of invention, it could be confidently stated that for every 10 concepts he pursued, 9 would prove to be correct and viable. He was, in this regard, an astonishingly prescient and effective inventor. As an individual, however, Nikola Tesla was by all accounts an extraordinarily difficult man to engage with. His personal eccentricities and profound social challenges were as remarkable as his intellectual gifts. He possessed a distinct preference for working during the nocturnal hours, finding solace and uninterrupted focus in the quiet solitude of the night. His laboratory was largely his private domain, where he operated with minimal assistance, relying solely on a handful of individuals he placed implicit trust in. Among these select few were his dedicated accountant, the meticulous keeper of his financial records, and a guide through his often complex monetary affairs, and a skilled engineer, responsible for the practical assembly and construction of his intricate inventions. Tesla, the visionary, conceived the designs in his mind, but it was others who performed the physical tasks of soldering, gluing, hammering, and screwing components into place. This division of labor was critical, as Tesla possessed an extreme sensitivity to noise. Loud sounds profoundly agitated and disoriented him. Beyond these core collaborators, a small group also supported him in his public engagements, for there are several lesser-known facets to Nikola Tesla's unique cognitive landscape. Nikola was a synesthetic, a rare individual whose senses overlapped and intertwined in extraordinary ways. Tesla's particular form of synesthesia was audio-visual. If a word was uttered in his presence, he would simultaneously perceive a vivid image corresponding to that word. Conversely, if he witnessed an object or event, he would often experience a corresponding auditory sensation. This unique neurological wiring manifested in peculiar social interactions. He might engage in conversation with an individual while simultaneously gazing elsewhere. Seemingly lost in thought, yet still processing the words spoken to him, even as his mind was concurrently designing an entirely new invention. This indicated a capacity for multiple simultaneous mental processes, far exceeding ordinary cerebral activity. Most individuals consciously focus on one primary thought process while their bodies manage automatic functions like respiration, digestion, and motor reflexes. Tesla, however, could sustain several conscious thought streams concurrently. This extraordinary ability afforded him a distinct intellectual advantage, yet it also rendered him, at times, incredibly impolite. While someone might be speaking to him, his mind could be simultaneously engrossed in conceiving a different design, visualizing another concept, and if the ongoing conversation failed to align with his immediate intellectual needs, he would simply disengage, leaving the speaker mid-sentence. His peculiarities extended beyond his cognitive processes. Soon after settling in the United States, Nikola adopted a strictly vegetarian diet, completely abstaining from meat. His meals typically consisted of bowls of warm milk with honey, supplemented by artichokes and various other vegetables. He generally harbored a strong aversion to solid foods. Furthermore, he developed an intense, almost pathological fear of microbes, a condition that evolved into a severe psychological pathology known as obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD. The simple act of shaking someone's hand could precipitate a full-blown nervous attack, compelling him to immediately retreat to a restroom to meticulously wash his hands. He would meticulously avoid touching anything he deemed unclean. Certain human behaviors, particularly loud or boisterous ones, deeply disturbed him. His personal life was marked by a complete absence of romantic relationships. He found no interest in interacting with women in a romantic context. Indeed, he famously, though perhaps playfully, declared his love for a pigeon, stating he preferred the companionship of the bird to that of a woman. This was not born of misogyny. He neither disliked nor offended women, but simply lacked the inclination for such relationships. A testament to this was the fact that the only person permitted to enter his private hotel room was a single, consistent chambermaid. It is rumored, though difficult to verify, that when he moved from the Waldorf Astoria in New York to the New Yorker Hotel, the very same chambermaid transferred her employment to continue attending to him, a testament to their unique platonic understanding. Yet, even with her, there was no physical contact. Tesla also harbored a deep, almost mystical affinity for the number 3. Before entering a building for the first time, he would invariably walk around it 3 times. Prior to retiring for the night, he would circle his bed 3 times. Before initiating any important task or activating a new device, he would meticulously review it thrice. All significant actions were performed in triplicate, a manifestation of his profound, if peculiar, obsession. This constellation of traits, while contributing to his singular genius, certainly did not make him a universally agreeable individual. Paradoxically, despite his reclusive tendencies, Tesla possessed a distinct fondness for the spotlight. He relished media attention, eagerly granting interviews, and sought to be noticed and celebrated for his groundbreaking discoveries. Despite his unparalleled inventiveness, as an economist or businessman, Nikola Tesla was, to put it plainly, abysmal. He consistently found himself at a disadvantage, perpetually missing opportunities that could have transformed him into an industrial magnate, yielding millions upon millions of dollars. A poignant example of this financial self-sabotage was his decision to unilaterally break a highly lucrative contract with George Westinghouse, fearing that his friend and collaborator might face bankruptcy due to the terms. This act of altruism, or perhaps an idiosyncratic sense of loyalty, left Tesla himself utterly destitute. He was, without question, a truly unusual individual. His personal life reflected this singularity. There was no wife, no children, and no known romantic partners throughout his long life. Yet, for all his social detachment, he could spend entire days, even weeks, cloistered within his laboratory, the curtains drawn, enveloped in total darkness. The only illumination would emanate from his own, groundbreaking wireless lamps, a fascinating detail often overlooked. His laboratory was powered by these revolutionary devices which required no physical cables. He would simply place a lamp, and as a series of generators hummed in the background, electricity permeated the ambient air, allowing the lamps to glow without any direct connection. This was not merely a parlor trick, it was a tangible manifestation of his lifelong ambition. His ultimate objective, a vision he articulated repeatedly throughout his life, was to provide humanity with free electrical energy. This noble aspiration stood in stark contrast to the prevailing model of the burgeoning American corporations, which were rapidly establishing vast, intricate networks of wired power, complete with sophisticated metering and billing systems designed for profit. Tesla fervently maintained that the same principles employed for radio communication, the emission and reception of electromagnetic waves, could be harnessed for the transmission of power. His revolutionary idea proposed that a home could be equipped with a simple antenna, drawing electrical energy directly from the ambient environment, much like a conventional radio receives broadcasts. You switch on a radio, and you are not charged for listening, as these are open frequencies, waves soaring through the air, distinct from the Hertzian waves used for communication. Tesla believed the same methodology could be applied to electrical power, making it a freely accessible utility for all. The undeniable evidence of this radical concept lay within his own laboratory, where his devices functioned perfectly without the need for any physical connections. All of these inventions, from the grand vision of free energy to the smallest mechanical improvements, were profoundly transcendent. As the new century dawned, in the early 1900s, Tesla's fertile mind began to pivot towards an entirely different, yet equally ambitious realm of inquiry. He became consumed by a singular, profound objective: to eradicate war itself. Tesla was an ardent pacifist, fundamentally opposed to the destructive nature of armed conflict. This stance put him directly at odds with powerful forces. The United States government, recognizing the immense potential of his inventive genius, repeatedly approached him with requests to develop projects and technologies with military applications, the paramount concern of the era. Yet, with unwavering resolve, Tesla consistently resisted, maintaining a principled detachment from the machinery of war. Consequently, he found himself in a state of perpetual conflict with virtually every segment of the establishment. On one hand, the entrenched scientific community, the venerable academics, and the celebrated scientists of the time harbored a particular animosity towards him. While Tesla was emerging as a heroic figure, a true titan of invention whose creations were nothing short of astonishing, he, in turn, showed little reverence for their established doctrines. He famously failed to present his theories, his materials, his calculations, or his research for peer review, effectively operating outside their hallowed academic framework. For them, he was not a true academic, and this disregard was deeply resented. For the powerful industrialists and magnates of the era, he was perceived as a formidable and dangerous adversary. Thomas Alva Edison himself engaged in a relentless campaign to defame, accuse, deceive, and exploit Tesla, employing every conceivable stratagem to ensure Tesla would not eclipse him in the public eye. While Edison was, undeniably, a brilliant inventor and an astute entrepreneur, qualities that cannot be denied, Tesla, by contrast, was a dreadful businessman, despite being a greater inventor and a transcendent genius. Their conflict was deeply personal and professionally bruising. Furthermore, Tesla's vision placed him in direct opposition to the colossal corporations of the age, particularly those vested in the burgeoning oil and electrical power industries. Imagine, for a moment, the revolutionary implications of Tesla's vision. Instead of meticulously filling your automobile's fuel tank, you might simply enter, press a button, and drive indefinitely, never needing to refuel, because electrical energy would be freely available in the atmosphere, perhaps harnessed through ingenious manipulation of the ionosphere. Such a paradigm, which Tesla claimed to have meticulously planned, threatened to utterly dismantle the very foundations of these colossal enterprises. If one could freely draw power for a vehicle from the air, the oil industry would face extinction. If electricity could be accessed wirelessly and without cost, the established utility companies, with their intricate systems of billing and revenue, would become obsolete. But his conflicts did not end there. He also clashed directly with the government by steadfastly refusing to apply his groundbreaking inventions to warfare. This principled stance, however, would prove tragically ironic, as the military would, in time, appropriate Tesla's creations and adapt them for destructive purposes. Indeed, many of Tesla's fundamental inventions were eventually weaponized. Thus, a pervasive animosity surrounded him from all quarters. Adding to this external pressure, his own temperament, his unique way of being, and his deeply entrenched obsessions drove him further and further into a profound state of isolation. In the year 1933, at the advanced age of 76, Nikola Tesla, though visibly aging, remained remarkably active, continuing to expound upon complex topics, sharing his profound insights, and informing the public of his ongoing work. His life, however, drew to a solitary close a decade later, in 1943, within the confines of his room at the New Yorker Hotel. He passed away entirely alone, his body discovered the following day by his faithful chambermaid. While numerous rumors persist regarding the exact circumstances of his discovery, the precise details of his passing are less significant than the astonishing events that immediately unfolded thereafter. Following Tesla's death, his nephew, Sava Kosanović, who happened to be the Yugoslavian ambassador to the United States and was present in New York, promptly attempted to take possession of his uncle's belongings. He arrived at the hotel room and began to survey the contents, but before he could fully assert his claim, a formidable intervention occurred. Agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, swiftly moved in, accompanied by representatives from the Office of Alien Property, and proceeded to confiscate all of Tesla's assets. But this was merely the tip of a much larger and more intriguing iceberg. It was soon revealed that Tesla's possessions were not confined to his single hotel room or his primary laboratory. He had, in fact, established numerous hidden deposits and several other clandestine laboratories spread across various locations within the United States, each containing a vast and undisclosed quantity of materials, documents, and prototypes. From New York alone, it is said that an astonishing 80 trunks filled with materials, along with countless other objects, were recovered and seized. The entirety of his known spaces, his primary laboratory, his hotel room, the other laboratories, and various storage facilities, were systematically emptied and transported for extensive review. The individual appointed to spearhead this critical review was none other than a profoundly interesting figure, Dr. John Trump, an electrical engineer and physicist, notably an uncle to a future president of the United States. In 1943, Dr. Trump, alongside a dedicated team of researchers and scientists of the era, meticulously analyzed Tesla's confiscated documents and equipment. Their official determination was that the material consisted of pure illusions, fantasies, and concepts that were impractical or of little applicability. Years later, the renowned and influential Dr. Vannevar Bush, a pivotal figure in American scientific administration during World War II, would further ratify this dismissive verdict, declaring the findings to be genuinely useless. However, as history has repeatedly demonstrated, when a scientist closely affiliated with the United States Department of Defense declares something useless, unworkable, or impractical, it is often precisely because that very thing holds immense, perhaps strategically invaluable, potential. The immediate consequence of this official dismissal was the dramatic and systematic erasure of Tesla's memory from public consciousness. Despite the undeniable fact that his inventions were evident, widely recognized, and demonstrably functional, many of them were deliberately allowed to be attributed to other minds. This process saw Guglielmo Marconi's prestige restored, with commercial radio being widely credited to him, while other individuals were credited with inventions that had clear Tesla origins. In this manner, Tesla's name was gradually, systematically, relegated to the periphery of historical recognition. He was posthumously characterized as the mad scientist, the eccentric, the strange individual who lived in total ostracism within the confines of his buildings. Why such a concerted effort to diminish his legacy? As previously noted, he had virtually no allies. Business magnates resented him, the government viewed him with suspicion, and the academic establishment scorned him. The only companionship he truly cherished, a beautiful white pigeon with gray-tipped wings, tragically died in his laboratory one day, an event that plunged him into profound sadness. This pigeon, which would fly through his window to eat crumbs from his hand, was, for Tesla, a source of immense joy. But why deny the undeniable? His legacy was systematically dismantled. There was no Nobel Prize, no grand posthumous recognitions, no elaborate ceremonies in his honor. Only small, understated articles appeared in newspapers. In Spain, the ABC Daily published a brief note titled, "The Creator of the Death Ray Dies." The death ray, however, was far from the least important or most outlandish of his ideas. It was, in fact, a topic of profound and enduring interest. Among Nikola Tesla's many extraordinary and often perplexing capabilities was his relentless, ceaseless drive to create. He was a polyglot, fluent in no fewer than 8 different languages, which he not only spoke with facility but also wrote with precision. Early in the 20th century, around 1900, his mind turned to an invention he believed could fundamentally alter the course of human conflict, an apparatus designed to end all wars. This device, chillingly dubbed the death ray by the sensationalist press, was in fact referred to by Tesla himself as teleforce, or, more technically, a particle beam. This, in essence, was his grand design. He posited that if a sufficiently concentrated beam of metallic ions could be accelerated to immense velocities, and then precisely focused in space, achieving a pinpoint accuracy comparable to the tip of a single hair, it would unleash such an astronomical quantity of energy that it would be capable of obliterating anything in its path. When he first presented this concept to the eagerly awaiting press of the era, the dramatic and terrifying moniker Death Ray immediately seized the public imagination. Tesla, ever the precise engineer, subsequently attempted to clarify the misnomer. He explained that true rays were inherently unpredictable, prone to erratic trajectories, susceptible to alteration, and easily deflected by various fields. He endeavored to convey the scientific principles behind his teleforce, but the sensationalist label, the death ray, stubbornly endured. He commenced preliminary work on this particular invention around 1900, but it was not until approximately 1915 that he began to speak openly about it. Immediately, a cascade of alarms reverberated through scientific and governmental circles. The very notion that this individual, with his proven track record of bringing the seemingly impossible into reality, was now developing such a weapon, was deeply unsettling. Consider this analogy. If a prophet has delivered 9 verifiable, accurate prophecies, when the 10th pronouncement is made, what would one reasonably conclude? That it, too, is likely to be accurate. Nikola Tesla had in effect delivered 9 such prophecies in the form of working inventions. When he spoke of this 10th, this teleforce, it was highly probable that he was speaking with the same profound insight and certainty. Naturally, this triggered an unprecedented level of alert. Furthermore, Tesla operated a highly peculiar laboratory situated in an area known as Shoreham, on Long Island, in the United States. Here he had acquired a property designated Wardenclyffe, where the imposing Wardenclyffe Tower was constructed. This monumental structure, standing approximately 30 meters tall, was specifically engineered for his ambitious transmission experiments. These experiments, crucially, encompassed not only the development of teleforce but also groundbreaking work on radio transmission and telephony signals, echoing his earliest predictions of global wireless communication. However, in 1917, fueled by a palpable fear of the potential ramifications of his work, the Wardenclyffe Tower was systematically dismantled and ultimately demolished. Official statements declared it useless, a failed project that had yielded no tangible successes. This act of destruction was not unprecedented. Tesla had previously constructed another immense tower, nearly 20 stories high in Colorado, where he had conducted similar, equally groundbreaking experiments. Thus, when Tesla spoke of the death ray, or teleforce, or a highly concentrated and accelerated particle beam, his pronouncements did not sound like the idle musings of a dreamer. His profound intention was to create this formidable device and make it accessible to every nation on Earth. In his vision, this universal access would enable each country to establish an impenetrable defensive barrier. The message would be clear: do not attack me, for I possess this ray, this beam, with which I can defend myself. It was conceived as a purely defensive, not offensive, weapon. If an enemy army were to approach, a protective barrier could be erected with this technology, capable of neutralizing an entire invading force. In some of his public declarations, he claimed this device could generate energy equivalent to billions of watts concentrated into a single, infinitesimally small point, or at least deliver an impact comparable to several megatons. That is many millions of tons of dynamite. The perplexing aspect of this death ray, or teleforce, is that, officially, the complete apparatus was never definitively found. Even shortly before his death, Tesla continued to speak of his progress, describing how he had created these devices and that they were in various stages of completion. Yet he left no conclusive physical evidence, or at least no such evidence has been publicly acknowledged. However, it is a well-understood principle that certain information remains unspoken when it serves the interests of powerful entities. The very individuals tasked with the recovery and assessment of Tesla's documents were, in retrospect, rather enigmatic figures. Vannevar Bush, for instance, a powerful scientific administrator, is frequently referenced in connection with the majestic 12 UFO conspiracy theories, and his name is entangled with the mysterious events of Roswell. Dr. John Trump himself, the initial assessor, was also reportedly involved in a series of classified experiments within the American Armed Forces. The crucial question, then, remains: what precisely did they find? In 1952, Tesla's nephew, Sava Kosanovich, finally won a legal battle, and a portion of the files were released to him. However, instead of the 80 trunks initially reported from New York, only 60 boxes were delivered. This discrepancy points to an enormous quantity of lost or deliberately withheld material. Many of Tesla's intricate devices were never returned, vanishing into an opaque void. Curiously, in Yugoslavia, the entirety of the expediente delivered to Kosanovich was placed under the direct control of a Soviet official. Delegations of Soviet scientists and university representatives from Moscow frequently traveled to review these materials, underscoring their perceived strategic value from an Eastern Bloc perspective. Meanwhile, in the United States, the official narrative continued to dismiss Tesla's later work as valueless, attributing it to possible senile dementia or a mere flame of a straw, a Mexican idiom for a brief, attention-seeking burst. The unvarnished truth of these events remains elusive, shrouded in secrecy. Yet, as the saying goes, by their fruits you shall know them. In the wake of Tesla's death, a series of remarkably similar and intriguing projects began to emerge across the globe. It is rumored that in his final years, Tesla dispatched letters to the governments of all major world powers, meticulously outlining the procedures for constructing his teleforce device. Perhaps this explains why, soon after his passing, it was not entirely coincidental that nations such as Japan, Germany, Russia, France, and indeed the United States began to work on inventions that bore an uncanny resemblance to Tesla's detailed designs for teleforce. The United States, in particular, whether clandestinely or through thinly veiled initiatives, embarked upon two major projects that echoed Tesla's concepts. Project NIC, initiated shortly after Tesla's death, focused on highly charged particle beams. This project, which spanned approximately 10 years, was conducted under the auspices of DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, a pivotal office within the U.S. government. Project NIC's explicit objective was the creation of weapons utilizing directed energy, specifically particle beams and electromagnetic pulses. Concurrently, Project SISO, another multi-million-dollar DARPA initiative, was launched in 1958. This more modern endeavor aimed at developing a remote missile interception mechanism, specifically designed to counter Soviet ballistic threats. The core objective was to deploy a sufficiently powerful particle beam capable of striking and destroying an incoming missile while it traversed the upper reaches of the atmosphere, thus preventing its impact on Earth and mitigating the dispersion of radiation. The underlying concept was nothing short of astonishing, and the echoes of Tesla's vision resonated further. Recall the Star Wars project, or the Strategic Defense Initiative, championed by President Ronald Reagan in the United States. This was, in essence, a satellite-based interception system designed to neutralize hostile targets entering American airspace for belligerent purposes, a direct conceptual descendant of Tesla's original ideas. But perhaps one of the most concerning aspects of Tesla's claims was his assertion that his teleforce invention could instigate earthquakes, alter weather patterns, affect human behavior, and even neutralize an entire army without causing a single fatality. His profound aversion to war meant he designed not destructive weapons, but preventive ones. His objective was not to kill the enemy, but to repel them, to make aggression impossible. Does this sound familiar? The HAARP project, the High-Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, commenced in the United States in the 1960s. Officially, it was presented as a scientific endeavor to study the interaction of the ionosphere and other atmospheric phenomena. However, for many independent researchers and conspiracy theorists, HAARP was, and perhaps still is, a covert project designed to manipulate human behavior through the emission of particle beams and electromagnetic pulses. It is further speculated that it could be capable of altering weather, and even concentrating such immense energy at a single point that it could impact the Earth's crust, thereby triggering seismic events. Whether these are mere conspiracy theories is for each individual to decide. Yet, once again, the striking resemblance to Tesla's original pronouncements is undeniable. Why, then, was there such an urgent and persistent effort to discredit him? It was not until 1960 that Tesla received a truly significant, albeit belated, recognition. The unit of magnetic flux density was named the Tesla in his honor. Beyond this, there were no grand posthumous awards, no profound public acknowledgments. A few minor medals and insignificant commendations were bestowed, but the most egregious, perhaps even insulting gesture was the presentation of the Edison Medal for his technological merits. The irony, given their bitter rivalry and Edison's efforts to undermine him, is stark. And now, one of the most astonishing stories, intrinsically linked to this discussion of the infamous particle beam or teleforce, is the Tunguska incident. Have you heard of it? On June 30th, 1908, a cataclysmic explosive event occurred in a remote, sparsely populated region of Siberia near the Podkamenaya Tunguska River, in what was then the Yeniseisk Governorate. On that fateful day, something exploded with immense force, devastating an area of approximately 2,150 square kilometers, felling over 80 million trees. The precise number of animal casualties remains unknown, as the region was virtually uninhabited. It is believed 3 local hunters may have perished, but the vast majority of victims were wild animals. Investigations into the event were not initiated immediately. Time passed, and the Soviet Revolution further delayed systematic inquiry. It was not until the 1920s that serious research began, revealing an astonishing scene. Miles upon miles of the Siberian taiga forest still lay flattened. Over the years, investigations have highlighted puzzling anomalies, such as the complete absence of an impact crater, no remnants of a direct impactor like a meteorite, unlike the Chicxulub event or other known meteoric craters. It is well understood that the prevailing scientific explanation for the Tunguska incident, occurring on June 30, 1908, posits a meteoric airburst. This theory suggests that a bolide, estimated to be about 100 meters in diameter, exploded some 5 kilometers above the Earth's surface upon entering the atmosphere. This atmospheric explosion generated a colossal shock wave, which was registered as far away as London and produced spectacular auroral displays visible for days across the Northern Hemisphere. While these calculations and explanations are scientifically robust, persistent doubts and lingering questions remain. Some theories suggest that the object was a metallic bolide that entered the atmosphere tangentially, merely grazing the Earth and exiting without direct impact or explosion. Numerous discrepancies continue to fuel debate. However, perhaps the most curious discrepancy of all directly implicates Nikola Tesla. On that very same day, June 30, 1908, Nikola Tesla dispatched a telegram to his patron and friend, Robert Peary. Peary was then en route to the North Pole, on his second attempt to be the first to reach this ultimate geographic objective. Peary and Tesla were acquainted and in communication. In his telegram, Tesla inquired whether Peary had observed anything unusual in the sky, for Tesla stated he had just tested a new device from his Wardenclyffe Tower. This means that on the very night a horrific explosion occurred in Siberia, on the opposite side of the pole, generating incredible auroral displays, Tesla was conducting an experiment with an apparatus in New York. It is important to note that Tesla's concept for an accelerated particle beam was not a linear projection. Instead, he envisioned it being sent upwards, rebounding off the ionosphere, becoming charged, and then striking the ground like a controlled lightning bolt. The dramatic auroras that followed the Tunguska event align remarkably with this theoretical framework. Thus, for many, the Tunguska explosion was not a meteoric phenomenon, but rather a catastrophic failure or an accidental demonstration of Tesla's experimental equipment. Of course, Tesla never publicly claimed responsibility for the event. Indeed, when questioned days later about any unusual explosions, he merely responded that he had heard of a distant blast. It is entirely plausible that he did not even attribute the scale of the destruction to his own invention, believing he had merely conducted a routine test. He had not traveled. His friend Peary was only just embarking on his journey, hence the request to observe the sky. This, of course, remains speculation. What is an undeniable fact is that Nikola Tesla was a genius profoundly ahead of his time. Many of the technologies we take for granted today are either directly based on his inventions or have been significantly influenced by them. It is not always that he invented the final product, but rather that others leveraged his patents, his discoveries, and his foundational creations to refine, enhance, and integrate them with other technologies, thereby bringing into existence the objects we now use daily. One such invention, undoubtedly, could be teleforce. The fact that we may not officially know of its existence does not, as with many other suppressed truths, mean it was never created. At least 3 major projects undertaken by the United States government have been undeniably linked to concepts pioneered by Tesla. Recall his prophetic words: "Any person on land or sea will be able to receive news from any place in the world, or messages destined only for them, with a simple device that fits in the pocket." He uttered this vision, perhaps 60 years before the first functional mobile phones became a reality, the very devices through which we can now connect and communicate across vast distances. A final, curious detail about this extraordinary man: Tesla typically slept between 2 and 4 hours daily, a truly rare physiological trait. He passed away at the age of 86, alone and visibly impoverished, a poignant end for a man whose mind illuminated the future.